Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to the river. And if you're joining us for the first time, watching on the videos, and of course those who are joining us live, big welcome to everyone. Okay, if you are joining us live for the first time on video, go to the River Branch website and come and join us in the community. And all you need to do is go to riverbranchfellowship.com. And if you scroll down on that home screen, you'll be able to look at where you can subscribe and join us, and we'll send out the newsletter to you. Okay. The Servant King. Now, this is, we're just going to do a couple of parts before we come into the spring appointed times. And these are sort of addendum teachings. We sort of looked at what we're doing as a community and in discipleship and things like that. But now the focus is more onto, of course, the King's plan and our Messiah's plan in how this all sort of fits in. And I've got here the Servant King. One of the aspects that we struggle to think about is just how our Elohim is doing this and this great plan of redemption while we're in the time domain. And we have an Elohim that is trying to teach us from the servant's position, teaching us by leading by example. And what he's done in his whole plan of redemption is he's presented this servitude position, and he himself is taking the lead on all of this. And there's a reason for that. And so we're just going to look at a few things here in today's teaching as to what, the how, but also the why, and to go into the position that he's taken to help us while we're in this time domain test, while we're in this fallen state. And so we have an incredible thing going on. We indeed have the Servant King. And this is a place which, of course, in our Mystery Babylon and our various religious journeys and in our Roman bondage and how we see the world behaving and the sort of the religious spectrum, this can get lost as to what our Elohim is actually doing. And so we just want to start to take a look at this in a certain way as we approach these spring appointed times. I've got a quote here, a heart matter. This is Albert Schweitzer, and he was a German, French polymath, and also theologian, a Lutheran minister. But he makes a quote here, and he says, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will be truly happy are those who will have sought and found how to serve others." There's a lot of truth in this because servitude itself ultimately will protect us from ourselves, and to learn this at this level. And so he does an interesting quote here, which is, I believe, does have some merit. Again, I don't think we're on the pursuit of happiness, but we can have his joy. And one of the ways that we can experience his joy is when the focus is not on ourselves. And so I think we have an Elohim that's wanting to teach us that. So in the discipleship series, we looked at this set of scales, how he weighs us in his sight. And we've got this honor and shame in the culture of what we do. And as a part of the faith, this whole thing in the faith, the true biblical faith is based around honor and shame. How are we going to walk through this time domain test? And between honor is sandwiched between humility and others, serving others. And the shame of our walk in our lives is sandwiched between our pride and, of course, self. And so we want to tip the scales of that, as we have talked, where the honor is starting to come into our lives. And as we humble ourselves and as we learn to serve others and to be a part of that greater thing, then we can see these scales start to tip, and walking in an honorable way, being an honorable vessel, will start to be seen in the eyes of the Master. And so we want Yeshua to see us in this light. But of course, we have to make the choice to repent and turn to him and to learn these things. So is the weight of these scales tipping in the honor side or in the shame side? And of course, we spend time in both, and we want to stay in that place because there is something coming. Whereas we come to the end of the age, a sense there's a shift in the womb, this entry into the time domain, and things are going to be run a little bit differently in the final age. And of course, we looked at this whole thing about this Akkad line of sight, working as one to serve, to take the overseeing protector design and the nurture protector design, and for this to be Akkad. And this is all a shadow picture of what's coming for Messiah and his bride, and how he plans to rule and reign in this final age. And he's going to bring something together that will ultimately go to the point of his righteous judgment. Upon all of this time domain and the age and his great plan of redemption. And so this is something that, although the world is trying to attack this design and all of these things as a true faith, he made us male and female, designed us a certain way and wants us to operate a certain way. And it's essentially designed for victory. If we can become Akkad, and of course that shadow picture is being Akkad or one with him in the age to come, and he's going to demonstrate this with his bridal governance. And she will operate as one with her Messiah to complete this final age. And so it's very exciting. And so Michael had touched on that in some neat ways in a Treasured Possession series. And so this was the timing to talk about the servant king who treasures his possession. So why does serving matter? What's this really matter? Why this whole servitude thing? Why do we have to learn this and to understand this? Why is something at the heart of our Messiah? And so we just want to take a look at this as to what might be going on from his perspective and what this is all about. Just before we do, I'm going to take a little side note on this. A lot of people right now are experiencing anxiety and depression. And one of the reasons for this is that we get focused on self. And Rome's way of dealing with this is, well, you're to love yourself, and all of this sorts of things. And this is essentially a lie. We're actually born into a fallen state. And in this state of iniquity, we inherently only love ourselves above everyone. And so this direction, actually, the way Rome does it, points us back to focusing on ourselves when we're experiencing things like anxiety and depression. This is a very difficult place in which to serve from. And so as a part of this, we end up morally compromising ourselves. We try to forgive ourselves. We end up drugging ourselves. Everything becomes a self-focus. Essentially, what the ways of the adversary of Rome, of these things outside of the Father's ways, is to put us on the throne of our own lives. That we will sit on the throne where Messiah should be, and that focus then becomes about ourselves. When we live in that place to its extreme, we experience things like anxiety and depression. And then, of course, that will take us out of being able to serve others, because we are actually focused on self. What he's doing in his way, Messiah's way, is that if we're born into a state of loving ourselves, this is the problem with who we are and what we are. We need to repent. We need to turn to him, the teshuvah in the Hebrew, metanoia in the Greek. We need to turn to him in his ways. It's not about us focusing on all the things we're getting wrong and all the things that we're struggling with, and that becomes all about the focus on us. If we actually turn to him in true repentance, we will actually start to focus on him, and that starts to affect the way we are actually viewing our walk in this life. He is the only one that can truly forgive us for all the ways that we miss the mark and all the things that we're struggling with. And once we truly understand that it's actually him that is doing this, then we're going to start to be set free, and we can receive his ruach at this point. The focus then will start to become about him, and as a result of that, others. But you cannot do this from a place of self. If we're trying to fix ourselves, we're going to get into trouble. And this is what we often tend to do. And so when we allow him to be on the throne of our lives, then we learn to submit to him and then to serve him and others. The interesting thing is he's doing it from a perspective of where he's serving us. And so this becomes an interesting thing. So one of the things that we really need to do, and this is why Yeshua said, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand, because in repentance, we will put the focus on him and others and get it off of ourselves. Of course, we are seeing a world that is engulfed in self now, and the darkness encroaches accordingly. And so we need to do it his way and not accept the ways of the adversary and things that are going on. Well, of course, we need help. And we spoke about this in the discipleship environments. I need help. You need help. We all need help to get our focus off ourselves and onto him. And then ultimately, the fruit of that will be others. So what is his serving? The servant network, what his framework, his serving, this servant framework, what is this really all about? And how does this relate to the king? Well, in serving man or Messiah, we've got this mystery Babylon thing going on. In modern Judaism and whatnot, it tends to be very liturgical focused. To keep the faith, keep the faith to the worthy. Those are worthy of, this sense of Judaism. Often in what you'll find in a lot of my Jewish brothers and sisters is they will not share their faith because they may not be Jewish or things like that. It often engulfed is in the Talmudic studies and in the Torah only. And so it leads people to a place in an ancient practices of Judaism, you would follow your rabbi or in the footsteps of your rabbi and teacher. But ultimately how this starts to express itself and why Yeshua held this to account almost 2,000 years ago was because ultimately it was causing people to follow man. And as a result of that, they actually rejected Messiah almost 2,000 years ago. And we're still seeing this today in modern Judaism as they've not yet to accept their Messiah. And so we see this. On the Christian side, we learn to do things. Let's just serve, let's just do things. And we try to do it in our own effort and strength. Again, we're caught up in Talmudic Christian studies. We read the books and how to self-help, how to do all these steps to whatever it is. And we tend to be focused on the New Testament and Bible studies and, life groups and all these sorts of things. And the various ways that Christianity expresses itself is essentially trying to reinvent the how. And modern Judaism focused on the what and the foundations of our faith. And then, of course, they end up following the pastor or the teacher. And essentially, it too, in the end, follows man as they've reinvented Messiah in their eyes. And so you've got these two great perspectives of the biblical faith that hold great truths, but both in the end, if we don't come out of these things, come out of her, my people, Mystery Babylon, and to get into the river of life, what happens is we can end up following man on either side. And so this is important that we are to follow Messiah, not man. And so what Mystery Babylon is doing is no, follow man, not Messiah. And so you've got this struggle going on. But how does this look and how is this supposed to play out in this servant king reality and what he's trying to teach us? Because both sides of these, in the end, sadly, will not require repentance. You can actually participate in Judaism or Christianity and not be in a place of repentance. And we don't need his Ruach. We can just do these things, learn and gain more knowledge, and see partly on one side in the Christian side, see partly on one side in the Judaism side. But neither in the end could be truly Messiah focused. And it becomes a form of the Mystery Babylon discipleship. And so we're supposed to come out of this. What is one of the ways that we come out of this? Is actually turning to Messiah and actually expressing itself in serving him and others. And it's a very interesting thing if we can do that. Now, the fruit of your life, we looked at this last time, and I just want to revisit something here as this addendum to the other discipleship parts. Matthew 7:16-18, you will recognize them by their fruits. So there's something going on here that's speaking to the believers. And what we have here is this sense of, okay, so we're recognizing by their fruits, are grapes gathered from thorn bush or figs or thistles. This is speaking to those of the faith. So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor a diseased tree bear good fruit. So this is an allusion to some of the parables which Messiah is going to talk about. We're going to look at some of these today. So what's actually going on here from a faith perspective? How is it that we are seeing on both the Jewish and the Christian side bad fruit coming forth if we are of the true biblical faith? How is this actually happening to us? What is going on? And if we could do this on good intention alone, of course, we wouldn't need the Ruach, but we do. Because it's much more than our best of intent. It's much more than our focus on trying to get ourselves right. This is actually a focus on Him and how this is going to actually play out. And so our servitude, if we are on the throne, can produce bad fruit because it is often without the Ruach. And this is what he's essentially alluding to. We're not in a place of actual servitude. We're in purely a place of learning, of knowledge. And so this is interesting. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will recognize them by their fruits. Well, if we were to truly take Messiah's words here and apply this to both sides, to both Christianity and modern Judaism at this time on earth, the faith would become unrecognizable in relationship to this because there is so much bad fruit being born. What is actually happening here? Is it possible to bear this much bad fruit out of the religious journeys and the religious communities and the faith communities and what many of us have experienced and seen if there was truly a change going on in our lives? Is it possible that we could actually bear the kind of fruit that many of us have seen, witnessed, have been a part of, and there's even in some cases has hurt us? What is actually happening here if we're bearing this bad fruit? Is this the faith? Do you know that Yeshua even wondered, will I even find the faith on his return? John marveled at what he saw on the island of Patmos when he was given visions of the end and what this religion, what the religious faith looked like right at the very end. He didn't even recognize it. What is this? He marveled greatly, and he's being given visions of this in the revelation of Messiah, in the book of Revelation. And of course, Yeshua had stated, will he even find the faith on his return? It's very, very serious matters for us to consider. What is the fruit of our lives? Are we hurting others? Are we sitting on the throne? Are we just on a pursuit of knowledge? I often say to people, show me your fruit. Don't tell me what you know or what you think you know. Who are you, brother, sister? What is the fruit of your life? What does it really look like? Because only with the Ruach and turn to him is this actually going to change. Now, all of us can look at this and be self-abasing, can't we? And we can sit there and look, oh, woe is me, and look how bad this is and that, and I've stuffed this up and things like that. But the reason for us to have a realization that maybe the fruit or the trail of the life we've been leading is not for us to be condemned in that. It is to allow us to have this awareness that we may, and the Ruach will prompt us, that we may turn to him and actually change our lives. If not, the fruit is not good. And Messiah is just telling us this. It's just not going to be good in our lives if we continue to sit on the throne. Yeshua is saying here in Luke 11:42-44, he says, but woe to you Pharisees, for you tithe mint and rue and every herb and neglect justice and the love of Elohim. So as a result of something here, you're neglecting something. And he's particularly relating it to justice and the love of Elohim, how you are treating one another, evaluating one another, and does this have the love of Elohim? He's saying to the Pharisees, these are the most knowledgeable of the true biblical faith, of the Torah, the prophets. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. So in other words, it's not about your tithing. It's not about what you're doing here. You're neglecting the weightiest of matters. Woe to you, Pharisees, for you love the best seat in the synagogue and greetings in the marketplace. You love to be seen and to be greeted in this position. And of course, we've seen this in its extremes on both sides of the river, both in modern Judaism and in Christianity, because they're following man and not Messiah. Woe to you, for you are like unmarked graves, and people will walk on them without knowing, and walk on them without knowing it. That's an allusion to where they would paint the graves so you didn't actually walk over them. And anyways, we don't have time to get into that, but it's very interesting to walk on dead man's bones. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries and their fringes long. The phylacterion here in Greek actually means a fortified place for a guard, a preservative, a safeguard. We often see this in Judaism is used to describe the small strips of parchments that they'll put on their foreheads, on their arm, especially during times of prayer. But the root of this, phalasso, to guard, to keep watch, to guard, to keep an eye on. In other words, they're literally taking over, and they're not truly guarding him and his ways. They're starting to guard the system. The fringes, of course, they're referring to, what we would wear in our modern tzitziot and things like that. They'll make them real long. Whenever I see somebody with tzitziot hanging to their knees, I'm wondering, is this just a way to try and express something? It may not be. Should be a reminder of the covenant and certainly the blood that bought us. But if we're doing these things without the why, to understanding them, we can make it about the systems we're trapped in. And we are following man. We're trying to paint the tomb, if we will. We're trying to present this certain place without the change going on inside. In the sense of the so-called servants of the Pharisees of this time, and they love the place of honor at the feast, the appointed time. So they're doing them. But they love the place of honor, the best seats in the gatherings and in the synagogue. This is a place of pride. Think of the scales. This place of pride is what he's addressing here. And the greetings in the marketplace and being called Rabbi by others. They're essentially demanding and loving this place of being praised, elevated by others. Are these servants? Is it possible we can be trapped in these religious systems and we're not actually servants? That we're actually seeing this following of man, and those that are being followed and those who are supposed to be sharing the justice and the love of Elohim are actually the ones that are stealing the glory of Messiah. It's a sobering place for any of us who would serve what Messiah is saying, especially for those who would teach. It's interesting, he says here, Matthew 23:18, we'll continue on here. But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you all are brothers. And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Neither be called instructors, for you have one instructor, Messiah. What's going on here? The system seems to be based around these, and yet he's making a point here. The Rabbi. What this actually means is don't be called the Great One. my honorable sir, greater than. There's a position here that's being elevated with this statement, this identity. For those who are supposed to be serving in that, they're taking now the seat of Messiah. And he's calling this out. They're actually putting themselves and their system and their ways, essentially their practices, above him. The instructors there, the kathates, guide, a master teacher. This is to rule, command, to have authority over. Is this the place of servitude in the body, to command and to rule over people? Yeshua would put this into a place of, he would put it in a place where they're lording over this Nicolaitism, which he hated. Are you serving? Are you lording over people? Are you having them follow you and not me? What is it that we're trying to do here when we're serving Messiah? Are we making and building our own kingdoms? Servitude, this is why the servitude must come with the title, the servant position before it. Must be in place before we refer to certain things. The servant position that flips the order of value and actually protects our heart from pride. We do need certain things. In fact, the Apostle Paul is going to talk about this. He finishes up with this: the greatest among you shall be your servant. Now, this is interesting. Your servant. And if we're all in a place of servitude, then we are essentially learning to serve the servant. We're all going to experience serving and being served. And this was the place that was going to protect us. The greatest among us is the one serving us. And if we're all serving each other and Messiah in each other, we're going to find a different place of how this looks. And it won't allow us just to be following the traditions and the precepts of man, which we see in our Talmudic teachings on both sides of the river. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. This servant position that's flipping the order and protecting our hearts from pride. So are we even to have leaders and teachers? What's going on here? You know, often it's funny, people get so hurt by these systems in their journeys and what's going on in their own actions. They get to a point where, and many of you will know this, well, I hear from the Ruach and I hear from God and I just do my thing and I don't need to hear from any man or woman or whatever's going on. I just do it myself. Is that the solution to this? I'll just now get back to sitting on the throne of my own life from a faith perspective because these people have hurt me or they've done this or I've done that. Is this what it's about? We just throw out the order of this place that we're supposed to learn. I can certainly understand why people get to that position, but do we throw out essentially the baby with the bathwater? Very interesting here in John 13, 12, 14. When he had washed their feet, so this is the washing of the feet, and he's doing this with his disciples. And of course, this was a very humbling position at the time because you certainly wouldn't have seen the Pharisees doing this, but from a rabbi or rabbi position, put on the garments. So he put on his garments, he's washed their feet. Here we go. He's put on the garments and resumed his place with them. And he said to them, do you understand what I have done to you? So this would have been really like, why are you washing my feet, master? Like, this is not acceptable. Like, they're not comfortable with this, by the way. And of course, the washing of the feet at that time was very important. We sort of sit there today, and a lot of Christian practices to try and enact this, they do washing of the feet. But of course, washing of the feet at that time was necessary. That was the part of your body you couldn't keep clean. You're wearing your sandals, things like that. In today's modern world, the washing of our feet is not necessarily in the same place. Although some of you might have a spouse and whatnot where you think that would be the case, or so on, or kids, or whatever it is. But what was happening was almost 2,000 years ago, you always essentially would have dirty feet. a lot of the time, especially in this part of the world. I'm wearing the sandals. And so you would come into the house or these sorts of things. This was something that would bring dirt into the house. We'd do that with shoes today, but not necessarily the feet. But the point he's making is that what would you do for another if they're continually having to face this? And so this is where servitude comes in. This was the example almost 2,000 years ago with the ancient house of Israel. And he's doing this, essentially humbling himself from the master teacher, Rabbi position. You call me teacher and master, and you are right, for I am. So he's making it clear, yes, you are actually announcing this correctly. But I'm washing your feet. If I then, your master and teacher, have washed your feet, you also have to wash another's feet. In other words, he is putting himself in the serve the servant position. And is there an Elohim that is doing this on a grand scale of a plan of redemption? I'm going to propose to you that it is. And when we finish the next part of this, the last shall be first. There's something that our Elohim is trying to teach us and protect us in the time domain. He's the ultimate CEO with the mop in his hand, as I put. Why? This is a moment where Judas is going to betray. He knows this. And he actually states that one is unclean amongst us. There's a reference here to Judas and the betrayal. Those who will not do this, too pride of heart, could end up in a place of betrayal. John 13, 15, 17. For I've given you an example, not the only thing, but an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you who do them. Why are they blessed if we get this example where we're going to serve into one another? This is a blessing. One of the greatest blessings is that serving will actually protect us from what? Others? The system? Is it possible that serving into others is protecting us from ourselves? Do you know, when I spoke about this anxiety and depression, do you know that one of the greatest ways for people to deal with anxiety and depression is to actually serve others? There's actually interesting studies on this. Now they're trying to tell you the solution's in a bottle of pills. But what if the solution was given to us by Messiah? And what if that solution actually relates to the walk and for us to be able to overcome? It's self that it's protecting us from. I'm just going to go back here for a sec, just to reiterate what he was doing. Do you understand what I have done to you? Why he's doing this? Do you understand? Why am I doing this? Not that I'm doing it. Do you truly understand why? In Ephesians 4, 10, 12, the Apostle Paul says, he who descended is the one who is also ascended from above all the heavens, that he might fulfill all things. And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the shepherds and the teachers. So wait a minute. He's giving this to the body to equip the set apart ones for the work of ministry, for the building up of the body of Messiah. So there is actually something being given. There is a sense of this teacher, the Rabbi, the whole thing that's coming forth, this expression within the body. So what does this actually really look like? So if we are given these things for the building of the body of Messiah, we can't be rejecting those who are called into servitude, and certainly that are expressing that servitude in the sense of apostleship, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. The model here, he refers to us as sheep and children and these sorts of things in the little diagram here. It's not a top-down. It is amongst. And as we grow and mature in Messiah, we will be used in different ways at different times as the Ruach wills. But that is not a lording over. It's not an authority. It's a servitude amongst. And so this model is very different because the ones doing it are fallen. I've got a picture there of donkeys for all, for all of them. This beast of burden, this beautiful picture of a servant that's not exactly in a great state yet. Doesn't look so good, sound so good, smell so good. But they are growing enough to be able to serve and to protect over and to even feed his sheep. This beautiful picture of this beast of burden, this servant that will take on and share in one another's burdens and to help others grow into this fold of Messiah, which the Apostle Paul acutely understood. He had come from the system that Yeshua literally had called into account, and that was going to get torn down. They simply had usurped Messiah and were no longer in a servant position. If we indeed find ourselves in a place where we are being used by Messiah because we've grown into Messiah, it is Messiah in us to others. It is not for us to steal his glory. And yet this mystery Babylon, this religious systems will lead us to do so because it will be playing on pride. It is a vastly different model than what we are seeing with Nicolaitism. If we get into the river, if we learn this model, Apostle Paul would go on as much to say, if you don't receive from these, it's not going to be good. He essentially said it won't be good for you because they've been called by Messiah to serve in that capacity. Not to usurp him, but to actually serve others in that capacity. And if they're growing to the fullness of Messiah, it is Messiah, the picture he's trying to give, it is me serving you. These are just simply the vessels I can do it from. Are we a vessel that he can serve through? Or will we usurp it? And is that usurping actually a matter of heart and pride? Will the servants be judged? Matthew 25, 20, 21. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you've delivered to me 5 talents, and here I have made 5 talents more. Interesting. The word talent there, the teleton in Greek, interesting what it means. The scale of balance. Think of the scales of honor and shame. A pair of scales. What's going on here? You mean you're presenting something that's being weighed in proper measure? Is it possible that this can relate to honor and shame? That which is weighed, this weight of varying in different places and times, the root of this, the Pharaoh, to carry some burden, to bear with oneself, to move by bearing, move or be conveyed by force or speed. Remember that. Something is being pushed forward with a very serious force. Now, this is interesting. You've brought back these measures, your servitude. Master, my servitude has brought back proper measure. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Now, this is interesting, this statement, you've been faithful over a little. I believe in the test and the time domain, you're seeing a reference concerning the time domain now. And what he's making is this statement of a coming judgment seat. This is relating to the Bema seat or the judgment seat of Messiah. This is the little. The final age that is coming, this beautiful picture of what he's going to be doing is the much. River Branch is the little. Your servitude in your family, husband, wife, raising of children, whatever work you may be doing, serving into ministry. Whatever it might be is a part of this beautiful picture of the faith, of serving one to another, is the little right now. We are experiencing the little. The question is, what is the fruit that's being produced? And what is this measure that is being produced in others? Are our scales in proper balance? Are we honorable vessels or vessels of shame? And so discipleship and serving one another is going to tip those scales, and he's looking for it. And this particular servant, there was many scales tipped when the master returned. Goes on to say, and he also had 2 talents. So another one comes forward saying, Master, you delivered me 2 talents. Here I've made 2 talents more. So reproduce this more. So in other words, the same thing is, Master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. Now I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. It wasn't the amount or the size of the talents, was it, that the master's looking at? He's saying, what I entrusted you with, your little, whatever that is in your life, have you been doing this in a way that is an honorable vessel versus the dishonorable vessel, the weight of the scales? And are you producing that in others, good fruit? Or are we producing nothing but bad fruit in our own lives and others' lives? And therefore we are perpetuating shameful behavior. The work of the Ruach and the circumcision of the heart is not occurring. And indeed, I don't believe it can occur without this true servant environment. This is why we have a king that has come as a servant king. Matthew 25, 24, 26 goes on to say, and he also received, so another one, servant come forward, he also had received the 1 talent came forward. So the one who received just the 1 talent, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So notice the one who's doing the reaping and the sowing here. It's the master, not us. Now this is quite sobering, actually. In other words, are these the people that were not raised in the faith at all? You mean these people may not even have been exposed to religion as such, but these ones chose to hide their faith. And he's basically saying, there was nothing here. So he became afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. So I went and took my balance, my scales, and hid it in the ground. Nothing was produced. Here, have what is yours. My honorable servitude and vessel I present before you. And essentially, this servant had gotten to a self perspective. That's all they have to present. I took what you gave me, but I did not reproduce it. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. So this is the servant position. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gathered where I scattered no seed. This is going to relate into the parable of the sower of the seed. But this is interesting. We have the spirit of the master, the Ruach. In other words, whether someone has been raised in the faith and the understanding of their Elohim and the great plan of redemption, the Ruach is moving into a place now that's going to become very important. Michael and I are going to talk about this with some of the meanings and the why of the upcoming appointed times, spring appointed times. He calls, and he can call from any environment he chooses. And yet this servant had gone, well, I was too afraid to go there. Is there a harvest all around us at this time? We're going to be talking about this in the upcoming appointed times. And we'll revisit a couple of things here as we go a little bit deeper. We don't have time today. But essentially, this servant is doing nothing with what they've been given, the truth, the understanding. So who does the sowing in all of this? Well, clearly, we've just seen that it was the master. In Matthew 13:3-5, now we get a different perspective of this. And he told them many things in parables. So the way the master Yeshua operated was with questions, parables, and repetition. This was the pattern of our Messiah. And you see this constantly through the Brit Hadashah, through the New Testament. Why are we looking at this focus? Are we looking to the testament of over 2,000 years ago? Because Yeshua was coming back to reset how this was supposed to be done. And in fact, we wouldn't be here today with a faith unless that early kahal, the early people of the body, had gotten this. None of us would be here today. This essentially was being reset. Messiah's come in his first coming to reset things because the religious systems have lost their way. And now we've got both sides that have lost their way. It says here, saying, a sower went out to sow, and he sowed some seeds that fell along a path, and the birds came and devoured them. The birds of the air that would come and nest. And this gets to the mustard seed in the tree. We don't have time to go there either today. But essentially, the seeds are falling, and there's something coming down, swooping down, and taking the seed. The word of his truth. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil. Boy, if there was anything affecting us here in the West, in the whole Western world, these great blessed nations, we are in rocky ground. All of us. Very rocky ground. And when this seed falls on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, it immediately sprang up. We often see this. I know in my previous and past Christian journey, but I also see it in a lot of what's happening in Hebrew roots, Messianic movements, is that this seed, this word falls, this truth falls on ground, but this ground is not toiled, it is not good, it is not healthy, but it springs up immediately. Whatever water it receives in sun, it can receive quickly, but there's no depth in the soil. It's not been tilled. And often what we see happen with these people is eventually the hardships, the trials come along, the sun rose and they were scorched. Since they had no root, they withered away. They weren't rooted in his word and the faith. Often in the Christian world, you see this. They are not on the foundation of the Torah and the prophets. It's been reinvented. So they come quickly. You'll often hear the term, they're on fire for the Lord. Some of you might be familiar with that. And then suddenly a couple of years later, it doesn't look so good. How could that happen? Did they actually have the roots actually in the true faith, or were they given a truth and then a faith that actually wasn't of him? And could it be expressed in so many ways on both sides of the river? Other seeds fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. And other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Again, it's just looking for this producing. We often look at, we think we've gotten into models where we're into bad fruit reducing. And that's not what we've been called to. Let's just try and reduce the badness. We're called to go forth in a faith that actually produces good fruit or a crop or a harvest. All of this is set in the ancient times of harvest, agricultural harvest. That's very difficult for a lot of us in the modern West right now to relate to, because we don't grow up with an agricultural understanding, and this is what they're talking about. But this soil that it fell on, but in order for soil to be good, it must be tilled. There's a tilling of the ground. And he's modeling and patterning something, a discipleship based on serving one another, that's going to allow this ground to be tilled. But he's the sower so far. So we're not in this. He's sowing the seed. He who has an ear, let him hear. So what are the priorities? What are my priorities? Are we true to this right now? Because there's something coming. Because we've got a till, we got a seed being sown, we've got a till, and we've got something moving that till, this plow, in front of it. Are my priorities in order? Look at this. Yeshua said to him, no one who puts his hand to the plow, no one who puts his hand to the plow. So they're not the plow, they're putting their hand to it. And looks back is fit for the kingdom of Elohim. Interesting. So we're not the sower, we're not the plow, but our hands are supposed to be on something. We're not fit for the kingdom of Elohim if we look back. What could do this? Is it possible that the priorities of our life, the way we have got it structured under our various religious systems, is taking us out of a servitude position? And as a result of that, we're constantly looking back at dealing with these priorities. Yeshua makes, in some people's, quite an offensive statement, as it says here in Luke 14, 25, 27. But is it? Now, these great crowds that accompany and turned aside, trying to learn what was actually going on. If anyone comes to me and does not hate, that's a strong word. The Messiah. To hate, pursue with hatred, detest. There's an example he's making here of something here. He's speaking in these idioms, these Hebrew idioms, these examples, these parables to get a point across. Is he asking us to actually hate our own father and mother in this time domain? Our wife, our children, brothers and sisters? Yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. So that's the requirement. If we're to not understand this in the way that he's trying to get a point across, he's saying, look at it like this. If you do not hate, I want to suggest to you the things you hate or detest in life that you don't pursue, both activities, people, are not the things you seek fellowship with. It's not the priority in your life. I don't know if people make the things they detest in life their priorities. They don't. And that's all he's saying here. Is it possible that the priorities in your life, however you're going to look at this, are trumping actually your repentance and turning to him? Have you made all these things in the time domain the priorities? Well, we need to. These are my children. This is my wife. This is my husband. I need to honor my father and my mother. Is, like, what's going on? How am I to relate to this? He's making a point. Is it possible that our priorities are out of whack? And if so, it's not even going to allow us to serve. Is it possible that we can go to put our hand to the plow, but because we have not got the order right in our life, we're going to constantly having to look back to a priority that's out of whack? The order of priority, those of the actual faith, Messiah Elohim is number one. Now that can involve all sorts of things at all sorts of times in individuals and people's lives. If you're married, your spouse is second, not first. Your children are third, and self's supposed to be last. Now we need to understand those priorities and what they are. But it's kind of interesting. The world doesn't agree with this. In fact, a lot of the religious system doesn't. Love yourself. The most important thing in your life is your children. The spouse is lucky to get some scraps, and Elohim's nowhere to be seen. Oh, but they're of the faith. The order's upside down. And we can all have this happen in our lives. We essentially can go into a place where we're wanting to serve or to do, to be a part of the faith, but we've got, our order is so out of whack in our home. Our home is not in order. The structure's not in order. Do you know the safest place for a spouse is when that spouse is turned to Elohim? To be second is only second to Elohim. The most honored position in the time domain of the flesh is an actual spouse. Do you know for children? Well, they're third on this list. I often say, try explaining that to Rome. Well, children should be third in your life. But actually in the faith, that's the safest place those children can be. They have a spouse. They have parents that are submitted to Elohim. cherishing and valuing each other, submitting into one another, there could be no safer place for those children than to be third. If those children become first in any household, it is going to be a disaster. And if the spouse becomes last, you can end up having broken marriages and everything else if this gets out of whack. And generally, all of that is the result of, as we struggle, is that the shame of our lives is weighed down because we're in self. Well, imagine trying to go into a place of servitude and you're constantly looking back at the disorder and chaos of your life. This is all Messiah is saying. Are our orders out of whack, and can we serve that position? Why do I need to be equally yoked? What is this all about? This yoke, again, we're talking a certain type of language. Is it agricultural language? We got the sowing of the seed, the tilling of the ground, this yoke business. What's happening? Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness or Torahlessness, or fellowship has light with darkness? Now, this is fellowship, this actual place of intimacy. This doesn't mean, you can't have or don't have Roman friends and family and those who are not of the faith yet. And you're to ignore them and not even, have them completely out of your life, as some do, as that wicked servant with the one talent did. But this is about being yoked to something. This fellowship is what we're not to have. Do I have intimate fellowship with my unbelieving friends, especially concerning matters of his faith and truth? No. Can I love them because they're not of the faith yet? Yes. Can I still serve into them, whatever way they'll allow, as Paul would put it, to be all things to all people? Yes. But the warning here is fellowship with that, to go to that intimate place of walking with someone. Do you know I have many believers that are still walking intimately with their unbelieving friends or whatever it is, taking advice, doing all those sorts of, they're in a place where you're getting wisdom that's not coming from the throne. And that's playing out in the order and the chaos of their lives. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Unequally yoked there. The heterozogeo, that's a big mouthful. To come under an unequal or different yoke. The root of this, the heteros, the other, a number opposed, a former person and thing, not of the same nature, former class. So don't be unequally yoked with something that is not of the faith. The root of that is the zugos, a yoke. Look at this, a yoke that is put on cattle. Burden, bondage, that of slavery or servitude. Thing that is often missed here in the root of this, pair of scales. Don't be unequally yoked with that, which is shameful. In the eyes and how he balances and looks at this with unbelievers. It's interesting there. We think unbelievers, that's just got to be those who don't, they're atheists or something. That's not what it's actually saying. Apostos, pistos, unfaithful, faithless, not to be trusted, unbelieving, incredulous, without trust in Elohim. This actually can relate to those who would claim the faith as well. The English is making it a little bit difficult here. Is it possible we could be walking with people who claim to be of the faith and they're faithless? They're actually not to be trusted? These are ones who don't trust Elohim? And is it possible those people could hurt you? And what if they were in positions of those who have the chief seats in the synagogue and desire to be elevated by man? Could they hurt us if we don't have this servant position? Is it possible that what we're saying is don't be unequally yoked with the apostate? Well, how are you going to know that if you're not in a place of walking with someone? Discipleship, fellowship, getting to know someone more intimately, to understand where they're truly coming from. And is somebody serving into your life that could be unhealthy and therefore produce bad fruit? Who are you listening to? Who are you walking with? Are they really in repentance? Who does the plowing? So we're looking at the tilling and the sowing. We still can't find us. The only illusion we have is that we're to get to the plow. Look at this. I'm the Aleph and the Tav. In the Hebrew, first and last letters, the beginning and the end. In the Greek, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Aleph and the Tav. Blessed are those who wash their robes. The robes here, the stole in Greek. This clothing, this speck, these outer garments that we wear, extending to the feet. Notice the feet are the only thing exposed. These were worn by kings and priests, persons of rank. The root of this, to set in place in order, arrange, to fit out, prepare, equip, to prepare oneself fit for use. Think wedding garments. There's something that's not going to be allowed to come in to the New Jerusalem. Think, who prepares the wedding garments? The bride. But she has help. And of course, our robes are washed by the blood of Messiah. A wash nefesh. Blessed are those who wash their robes, who go through this process, that they may enter the tree of life, that they may enter in by the city gates. Outside are the dogs, the sorcerers, the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. Interesting. What if this was speaking all about believers? Who's outside the city gates? What is this? What are those talents that the scales tipped in honor versus shame? And as a result, the robes were washed, the hearts were circumcised, and they're going to enter into the city gates, which is an allusion to the New Jerusalem and a final coming age. Is sovereignty in place here? In his servitude, serving one another and him in us? Is it showing us something? The Aleph and the Tav is very interesting, especially in the Proto-Sinaitic. These inscriptions is generally around the Bronze Age, and it generally relates to 1800 BC to around 1500 BC. This is this sort of progression, the ancient Hebrew. But it's very interesting how it depicts these things, the Aleph and the Tav. Because at the time that we see the Israelites came out of Egypt, and then they eventually go on to take the land of Canaan, which would become the land of Israel. The interesting language that was being developed at this time and what was being used, you're seeing the picture of what an aleph looked like. It's an ox head. I don't believe it to be any coincidence that the archaeologists and whatnot are discovering that this somehow related to the ancient lands of Canaan, and actually the origin of this came out of Egypt. And in fact, just recently, in archaeological inscriptions were found near the Nile. It suggested that the script originated in Egypt. This makes sense. Who was in bondage in Egypt? What came out of Egypt and was brought into the wilderness and led into understanding the faith? Right around this time zone and then going into the promised land is when we are discovering that these were the symbols for the Aleph and the Tav. Interesting. An ox head and what we'd call a modern day cross. Is this a coincidence? Thousands of years before this would become a Roman crucifixion device. Elohim knew what it was going to become, but it was going to be a beautiful picture that was painted. We'll talk about that, in the upcoming week of Unleavened and the Passover. But he's writing a script outside the time domain that is phenomenal. And he's delivering it to his people just the way he wanted, in time, that they may learn and understand something. These great symbols, this Aleph and Tav, and now the master's going, I am the Aleph and the Tav. Actual statement of deity there. My yoke is easy. Now we're going to look at this plowing side of things. The sowing, the tilling of the ground. Now we get the plowing. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father. And no one knows the Father except the Son. It's a statement of Echad. One. And anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all who labor, who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. A statement of what we'll experience in the time domain, this test. To actually experience the travail of this life. Its burdens, its hardship, its test. In ancient times, we're going to somehow get rest during this whole burden and tilling of the ground. In ancient times, you're actually seeing here. In fact, this is still used today in some areas of India and in Asia and Africa, because essentially it was the means of agriculture, dealing with the fields that would produce the crops and the harvest by the poor. And they would basically, and to this day, it is still used in very poor areas where you have the two oxen and you have the till and you have the person who's actually operating this. Here's another example that we see being used in India today. Again, by the meek, by the poor, that is being used to do this picture of the tilling of the ground. This ancient picture of the ancient Hebrew Israelites doing this picture that relates to the Aleph, this servant king. I can just to you something here when Yeshua says this, Matthew 11:29-30, take my yoke upon you, yoke, the zugas, yoke that is put on drought, cattle, burden, bondage, of slavery, of bondservants. The root of this, to be yoked. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Burden, the phation in Greek, load, freight, burdensome, obligations. Is he taking responsibility for something? And this is very interesting. He's saying his yoke is easy, his burden is light. What he is taking on, he can deal with. What would the picture look like? What would it truly look like if the person operating that plow jumped off, got rid of one of the oxen, and stood there and actually took the place of what was actually supposed to be pulling the till? And when we take matters into our own hands, when we do things our own way, when we're trying to do this, are we trying to do something that he actually can deal with, but we're now going to take it on? And if something is unequally yoked, they'll steal this from a brother who mentioned this. But if something is unequally yoked, if you were to actually have an unequally yoked situation going on with your plowing, you'll start going in circles. And our harvest would start looking like crop circles. I kind of laughed when he mentioned this. Almost an alien way of doing this burdening, this plowing. It would be ridiculous for the person to get away from the actual plow itself and take the place of one of those oxen. Remember, the only place the master gave us is those who put their hand to the plow. Doesn't mean they are the plow. They're not the sower, and they're certainly not the oxen. If we take the yoke, which is easy for him, we humble ourselves in a certain heart, he takes our yoke and carries the load, the burden. But we're doing it with him, and for him, he can do this. We are not here to try and fix and save people. We are here to serve into them, and the Ruach will heal, will restore, will circumcise. Based on their repentance, we are to serve into the repentant. But we're trying to fix people. We're trying to circumcise them. We're trying to deal with our own burdens. We are taking on something that we were not supposed to do. And as a result, we build up all these religious systems around this, and we end up hurting ourselves and others in the process. This beautiful picture that we are seeing, the weight of the servant, they would either stand on these tills or they'd put their hand on it. They'd have their hand to the plow. If you think this ancient picture of plowing the fields is coincidence when it comes to I am the Aleph and the Tav, what you would see from the position of the ground being tilled, the ground of our lives, if you could look up, when the ground of your life is being tilled, you are going to see the Aleph and the Tav. If you think that to be a coincidence, then I don't think we have eyes to hear and eyes to see and ears to hear. He has done this in these ancient practices for a reason, because the ground needs to be tilled. And in this picture, you have a beautiful picture of Father and Son Elohim, the two oxen, and the ancient Tav, the till itself, and he sowed the seeds. He's the sower, the truth, the word, the till, the ruach, and this beautiful picture of Father and Son Elohim. And if you're the ground being tilled, this is what you're going to see. And he's saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. And when we get into the servitude position after the ground of our lives have been tilled, do you know that when they place the weight, when they stand on these ancient tills or press down upon them with their hand, if that's placed with the weight of repentance, of honor, it's going to till more ground. It's going to produce more talents. The yoke of balance, the servant king, the Aleph and the Tav, the strength of Elohim to accomplish what he started, and he's doing this from the servant position. He is plowing this. He is moving it forward. He is doing all of it, and he's doing it from the place of servitude. And when he came and was here with us in the flesh, he was demonstrating, I will do this from a servant, because as an Elohim, as a king, as the great plan of redemption, I'm going to complete this task from the servant position. I am going to serve you, and you are going to learn to serve me. And there's something coming. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Mark 10:45 captured this when Yeshua said, and this is the context, the mother here, the sons of Zebedee, is requesting her sons sit at his side in his kingdom. She's wanting her sons, may they sit at your sides in the kingdom. This is a statement she's wanting. She knows where they're going. This is a place of honor, perhaps the place of the bride, of bridal governance in the coming kingdom. And a mother is literally bringing forth. And this is his answer. This is his answer. Oh, you want this for your sons? Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Do you know what he's telling her in this moment? If you want them to sit beside me, they're going to need to learn to serve the way I have determined. I am the sower of the seed. My spirit tills the ground. I am the strength that pulls the plow. My servitude to you will teach you what servitude looks like. Put your hand to the plow, and don't be choked out by all the things of this life and the priorities of our lives. Get them in the right order, and it'll work, and you'll let me serve you. And as you serve me, as I serve you, you will serve me. You will learn to serve me, but I serve first. I am the servant king. I will show you how it's done. Then you'll learn to serve me. And when you learn to serve me my way, my yoke then is easy, and my burden is light. Is it possible that even in our best of intents to serve, we are still trying to do this in our own strength, our own ways, according to us sitting on the throne, according to our religious experience? Is it possible that we're trying to do this? And that all he's asking us is, let me serve you. Then you will be able to serve me and others. Are we allowing the servant king to actually serve into our lives? And is it possible there's a coming age where we're going to see this great servitude? Is it possible the whole plan of redemption has been based on Elohim actually serving us? And when we get this, we serve him. And when we get this, we grow to the fullness of Messiah. And when we get this, then we are serving others, and his Messiah is in us that is serving others. Let's stop there. And we'll finish this off next week as we look at what's actually coming.